Hydroponics is growing plants in a soilless environment where they're actually replace soil with inert objects, and all of the nutrients, instead of getting taken up from the soil, are put into the growing medium with water. I went to Essex Aggie in Danvers for plant science when I was in school, and I always liked dwarf trees and things like that I grew in my own room year-round. So I used to have fruit trees growing in my bedroom in the middle of the winter, things like that. And when I started seeing hydroponics coming out, I was very interested in it, so I actually made my own hydroponic deep water culture out of Tupperware and grew lettuce in my den to see if it was feasible. And once I realized it was feasible, my son and I started growing lettuce in a greenhouse that somebody had given me. They used to have a boat in it, and kind of converted it, and we started out growing lettuce about 4 years ago. There's 4 or 5 different types of growing. Ebb and flow, where it actually kind of what this system is. The buckets get watered at a certain time and the excess runs through and runs back into the tank. The lettuce itself that we grow is grown in a nutrient film technology. It's a thin layer of water that runs in a trough constantly. There's a few companies that have kind of like a bubbler system where the plant is suspended above the bubbling water and the roots actually hang down into it and are always constantly in a couple of feet of water. There's also a couple of other people that are doing stuff that just spray on the roots. You know, there's a bunch of different systems. There's somebody in California and Florida that have a giant swimming pool that they float lettuce on top of, these little foam rafts, and the lettuce actually grows through it and hangs down. And as you push the plants through the swimming pool, it takes them a month to get to the other end and that full size. There's a lot of different ways. Yes, we grow outside in the fields in the summertime, and last summer I had about 100 feet of tomatoes per row and never got even close to the amount of tomatoes that I got out of these 80-foot rows in hydroponics. We get about 125 pounds of tomatoes every row every week in the summer. And outside in the fields we were getting maybe 40 pounds out of a row. So it's a lot, big difference. But it's controlled better. My son and I set both of these greenhouses up in Foster, and it took us about 6 weeks to set up the hydroponic lettuce, and it took us about almost 2 months to set up this greenhouse for tomatoes. There's a lot of things that come into play. Because there's water involved, the pitch of the floor has to be right so that everything runs back to the tank. The lettuce house needs angles on all of the troughs that are 1 inch per 10 feet so that the pitch is right. It's pretty involved, but once it's done right, everything works good. There's always difficulties, but they start showing up further down the road as you go. Some of the things that we do now, we do differently than when we first started because we just learned that. You know, there was a bunch of difficulties with the nutrient in the solution the way we were monitoring it, the way we were filling up the tanks. Things had to be changed to make it work better. So, I mean, there's always difficulties, but there's plenty of people around that can help you. You know, the people we buy all our supplies from are always giving us advice. The lettuce took us 4 weeks from when we started to when we could sell lettuce. The tomatoes take about 6 weeks to 8 weeks once you start it before the fruit starts coming in. And then, I mean, the cucumbers take a little bit to get going too, 6 or 8 weeks. The green beans take, depending on the variety, anything from 4 weeks to 6 weeks to get going.
Plants and vegetables?
Yes, there's certain plants that work really well with certain types of hydroponics. We have flood tables in the back, which I can show you after, that we actually are growing carrots in right now. It's a different system where it actually floods the table and then all drains out, and it works really well for that. You know, the lettuce table seems to work good for basil and lettuce, stuff like that, spinach. You know, this system is called Dutch bucket. It works really well for big plants. You know, so they all have their advantages. This house can lose power for almost a day and not have a problem, as long as the temperature is right. We do have backup generators and backup heaters that we use. The lettuce table runs on a pump, kind of like a pool pump, and you can't shut that down for more than 4 hours without problems with the roots drying out. So if we do lose power, the lettuce house has to be run at least every 4 hours, where this system can go can go a day without any problem, as long as the temperature is right.
To this particular farm?
For the most part, people really like it because it's super fresh and super clean. When we pick lettuce, the customer usually buys it within a day, and they can have it last up to 2 or 3 weeks and still look perfect. But the difference is that the stuff that you're buying in the store is coming from Mexico or California, so you get it, it's already 2 weeks old before you even buy it. The tomatoes taste like summer all the time, so people really like that. And the cucumbers are really fresh, they don't have any wax sprayed on them or anything like that, so they're really incredible. For the most part, 90% of the people that come here really love the hydroponics. There are people that are afraid of it because it's not, to them, natural. So there are people that shy away from it. But in reality, we're just mimicking nature. Yes, I mean it's fresh local produce. We cut down the distance that it has to travel for people. It's very nutritious. We have it tested all the time, and it's really good. Hydroponic lettuce is easily digestible, more than field lettuce. So there's a lot of elderly people that will buy it that couldn't otherwise eat it. So I mean, I really think it's a great thing, and more of it should be around for other communities.
We have a few hydroponically grown items. There's actually a farm in Fall River called Urban Acres, and they just opened like a year ago. But they do hydroponically grown Boston lettuce. They do a lot of different varieties of basil, lemon basil, purple basil, Thai basil, and they do some herbs like thyme, sage, maybe parsley. From our distribution center, we get hydroponically grown watercress. since I started with the company 9 years ago, we've had hydroponically grown items in the produce departments. People definitely care about where the product's coming from. They always want to buy domestically if possible. And yeah, I would say we don't have a lot of labels on it compared to like a grocery team. But people check the labels just to see where it's grown. Yeah, they're always looking for organic product as well.
So hydroponic is organic, right?
It's not marketed as organic because you can't certify water as an organic product. We tend to have higher quality standards than some of the conventional supermarkets as well. And especially in the summer, this store in particular, we tend to source a lot locally grown farms. I would say, yeah, they improve the sustainability of food. They probably have a future to grow in this department anyway. We don't have a ton that's hydroponically grown, and I'm sure there's an opportunity to do that. Our department has it's less than 1%, for sure. Like you mentioned, it's a more confined area. You have less square footage, I guess. You can go vertically to grow the product. If you go into those farms, a lot of them are on trellises and then again on the ground too. So it's a less of a footprint. And then instead of doing like a mass watering, if you were doing outside field, you can have like a drip irrigation.
We at Dave's Marketplace, we try to support the local farmers as much as we can. They provide us with the freshest grown product that we can get at the time during the summer months. We have a few of our other farmers up in Canada who do grow the hydroponically grown produce for us, and which provides a sustainability aspect. Hydroponically grown product. They're better for the environment. They use less pesticides, actually no pesticides. They use less water in the growing process, and they pretty much can grow them year round.
This is our green beans. It's actually, they're called Vortex, which is a variety from Texas. They really like the heat, so they work well in the greenhouse. And they stay really tasty even though they're really long. Because they're Texas, everything's bigger than Texas. So this row is 80 feet long, and we will get 80 pounds a week out of it all summer long. So a lot more than out in the fields. We grow beans out in the fields, we don't get nearly as much as that. And the deer usually eat them, so this is a lot better. So you can see this is here's our regular tank. It's full of nutrients. We actually, every 2 weeks, pump it down, get in it, scrub it with soap and water, clean it all up, change the nutrients. And you can see the two little air stones in there, kind of like you'd have in your fish tank to keep things kind of fresh. So this was actually just changed today. Every day we adjust the pH in them, and we check for the total dissolved solids in the tank and monitor that. So this way, here's our plum tomatoes. I grow these so Audrey can make sauce. And then down the end we have a different kind of growing system. These are flood tables. This is all just solid perlite, and these are carrots. I started from seed, and they'll be 3 more weeks, they'll be a full carrot. And it's just got a little screen, it floods to a certain level and then just drains right out. And these are a different type of green bean. They're called Provider. They're a bush bean that I'm trying to see how they do. They're faster coming to bear fruit, but they actually don't. That way I can grow, a couple feet shorter than the rest, so I can just pack it in there. Let's see. We don't spray any pesticides. We use a thing called integrated pest management. These little cards are bugs that we buy that'll take care of the white fly, which is all this stuff here is white fly chewing on the bottom leaves. So we buy these bugs, they hatch out and attack the white flies, and then they have kids that attack, and it just keeps multiplying. We also use ladybugs. We just released 9,000 of them. We buy them in big giant bags and they march through the place. We just had praying mantis hatch out, so they're in here somewhere. And then we have parasitic wasps that go after aphids. And aphids, unfortunately, love cucumbers. So anytime I plant cucumbers, about halfway through the cycle of the cucumbers, the aphids move right in. So I always seem to be fighting them. Let's see where I can show you. Because this is a closed environment, this little white stuff is called white powder mildew. It's kind of because the greenhouse is closed up and you're living in this giant bag that there's so much humidity and stuff, so we're always fighting that. But this is just something that happens all the time, and we spray potassium on it to change the pH ever so slight to keep it under control. So there's all kinds of little tricks. But that really has nothing to do with hydroponics, that's every greenhouse. What else? All of our pollination is done with the fans. So you see the fans set up moving the plants and the yellow flowers up top. As soon as the temperature is right in the morning, usually around 9 to 9:30, as long as the fans are moving, it pollinates. And that's how we end up pollinating. Because the tomato plant is a complete flower, has male and female parts in it. All it has to do is just be moving it a little bit and they'll pollinate. Let's see. Here's our cucumbers. You can see some of the aphids trying to move in. But usually if you look around, let's see, the little tiny black dots, like that, and that, and that, are actually the good bugs that are after them, that we buy. So, right now we're getting about 40 cucumbers a week. When it's up and running at full speed, because some of these are just new plants coming in, it'll actually be about 300 cucumbers a week. And it'll go for a while, as long as we can keep the bugs under control. The only thing about cucumbers are they attract aphids like crazy. They think it's like candy. But, same deal. Here's some of the cards. Here's some of the good bugs. Little dots. It's always something. But what I do is the table is actually broken in quarters. So this week is 2 weeks behind this week. So I'll pick, that way it lets the little ones are next to the bigger ones to save some space. So when I pull this one, it'll leave more room for this because that'll be a baby. The heaters are direct fired into the greenhouse. They produce CO2, which the plants breathe, and it makes them grow 15% faster. And then the lights are grow lights that are metal halide, so that it keeps daylight long. So it actually comes on early in the morning, like 4:30. It'll come on, and then when the sun comes up, it shuts off. And as it gets dark at the end of the day, they come back on and shut off around 9:30 at night. So it makes it kind of mimic summertime. That way we can keep the 4-week cycle going. Yep. So all it is just a little trickle of water. And then underneath there's a tank that's buried in the ground. All the tanks are in the ground to try to keep the temperature below 60. Once the water temperature goes above 60 degrees, you start having problems with algae and things like that. So if I keep the temperature low, I never have to add any extra chemicals. So I actually use, these things here are chillers for the summertime. So they actually cool the water down so that the lettuce is actually in a nice 60-degree bath water. Keeps them cool, and they like it because lettuce doesn't like it hot. Even in the fields in the summertime, you can grow lettuce up to like June, and then after that, it's too hot. It'll just bolt, so you can't grow it. So nobody grows lettuce in July and August because of the temperature. But I can grow it year round because I keep things cooler in the summer and warmer in the winter. So how's that? Any questions?
What do you think about hydroponics when it comes to sustainability?
I think that because we use less water, 75% less water, there's 800 head of lettuce on the table now, and I use 200 gallons of water for 2 weeks, where most farmers with 800 head of lettuce will put 200 gallons on every 3 days. So it uses 75% less water. It can grow a lot in a small area. You can do it in an urban setting, you can do it in a desert, it doesn't really matter, you can do it anywhere. So to me, places that don't have the right conditions to grow good food can still grow good food. You know, they talk about Haiti doesn't have any real topsoil. It's all been stripped off from clear cutting all their forests. You could just go in and set something up and grow lettuce, you know, or tomatoes or whatever you want, and don't have to worry that there isn't any soil.
What do you think about hydroponics for the future? Is it going to become more popular than agricultural farming?
Well, a lot of the produce that you buy now is grown hydroponically. They just don't tell you. If you look at in the stores, you'll see Boston Hydroponics or Vermont Hydroponics. They're actually companies out of Canada. And Canada subsidizes all the farmers, so that there's, if you go up there and just on the other side of Niagara Falls, there's miles of greenhouses that all get cheap electricity, because that's the real drawback is electricity. They get it subsidized by the government, so they can really compete. And most of your tomatoes, most of your cucumbers, most of your lettuce is grown that way in the store. You just don't really know it. And it'll move into other areas as things go. You know, I just started growing green beans that way, and it's feasible. And Audrey and I are looking at someday getting a whole greenhouse just for green beans, because you know people love them and they're easy to grow. So I think there's a real future for it, and it's just going to keep going. You know, especially when farmland gets sold off. So now I can grow a lot of stuff in a small area and don't need thousands of acres anymore. You know, really it's going to end up being that way all over.
Well, thank you for the interview. I appreciate it very much.
All right, that's some great questions. I hope you enjoyed it.